Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I'm very excited to announce that I'm doing another live viewing of one of our favorite movies, and that's Wonder Woman. Now, I'm sure some of you are like, but my favorite movie, Grace, is actually Spider-Man Homecoming. And isn't yours? Come to think of it, Grace, isn't that your favorite movie of the year? Still is, and I will be doing a live viewing for that film as well when it comes out in actually just a few weeks. But this Sunday is all about Wonder Woman, and this is how it's gonna go down. So again, this Sunday, September 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I picked Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time because I believe it allows for the most of us to participate. I did put it up for a vote, and you guys agreed. And for those of you who are like, but I don't understand, Grace, why 3 p.m. on a Sunday? Well, this allows everybody on the West Coast to join in at noon. And then if you're in the UK, 8 p.m. And then if you're just past the UK in Europe, then that's 9 p.m. And so again, I realize that some people still, it won't be convenient to you, and I apologize for that. But again, I felt this covered the most of the globe. And the video, the live viewing and the Q&A that's going to go on afterwards will be up as evergreen content on the Beyond the Trailer channel on YouTube, so that if you can't join in live, you can still have the experience. I can still watch with you. All right, so what you have to do is you have to buy a hard copy or a digital copy of Wonder Woman. I will not be showing any of the movie, or you won't be able to hear any of the sound from the film in the video. So you have to have your own copy of Wonder Woman. Then you tune into Beyond the Trailer right here on YouTube on, again, Sunday, September 24th, this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you press play when I press play. I'm trying to find a timer that can go on the screen. I'm having a little trouble, so if anyone has any suggestions on how I can do that, please let me know. And then again, right afterwards, there will be a live Q&A. And then on Saturday, sometime on Saturday, those events will show up in the playlists on the Beyond the Trailer channel. So you can I think you can click on them and put it in like your to-do list to remember to watch it, etc. But you'll see where exactly you'll click to watch. And again, those videos will be left up for anyone who can't participate in the actual live event. So the only question left is, what snacks should I have while I watch Wonder Woman? I'm having trouble deciding, right? I'm not a big fan of Greek food, unfortunately, but I'm like, maybe some grapes, maybe some pretzels and hummus. I don't know, I have to think about it, but we'll have a great time, and I'm excited to watch with you. All right, so let's move on to today's morning movie news. And the first story of the day is I want to talk about the Emmys last night. There were some big things that happened. Of course, two people made history. Donald Glover was the first black director to win for comedy. And then Riz Ahmed was the first South Asian actor to win an Emmy, period, for The Night Of. And I'm so happy for him. I don't know if he's going to make it. It's taking him a really long time to get off the ground. He was in Star Wars, but was he really? I mean, he had like a couple of nice moments. For the most part, I felt he was more of a background character. And then he was nuts for most of it. And I was like, well, I'm sure when he saw that in the script, his heart sank a little bit. He was like, oh, man. But anyway, I'm a big Riz Ahmed fan. Let's see if he gets this Venom role that he was up for, apparently. No news on who actually ended up getting it. But I'm glad that he at least got an Emmy. But 2017 continues to be the year overall for women, as they dominated once again. Veep, of course, huge winner, although on a sad side note, Feud was shut out in all the major categories. I think that's really tragic. Feud was just such a fantastic fantastic show, and I think if you watch something like Morning Movie News, you would agree. But I think it shows that for the most part, industry stories are still a hard sell to the mainstream. Although the Emmys are an industry event, so I don't know why they weren't into it. Maybe they felt they already rewarded American crime, also from Ryan Murphy, the OJ miniseries on FX, and so they're like, we can't have Ryan Murphy every year, and so they decided to instead turn their love to two shows in particular, again beyond Veep. But Veep's been winning Best Actress, for instance, Best Comedic Actress for years. But, and by the way, if you're wondering, like, why is this the year of women? Well, Beauty and the Beast, Wonder Woman, and Girls Trip were all huge hits at the box office. And then on the small screen, The Handmaid's Tale won a ton of awards. Like, wow, that was a big deal for Hulu. They just came out of nowhere and became a major player. And then also Big Little Lies on HBO. Now, with The Handmaid's Tale, to be fair, I haven't watched it, but what I've read of the show, I feel it's a little bit inflammatory. And I think that, I don't know, maybe like in Trump's America, there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, this could happen. Do you see it? Maybe it plays into that a little bit, those fears. But I don't know. It just, I also feel it's sensational. I haven't liked what I've read about it. Let's just put it that way. I feel it's like feminism gone crazy. We'll see. Now, for Big Little Lies, and I'd be curious, by the way, if you do watch The Handmaid's Tale, what's so good about it? And how is it not feminism gone crazy? Now, but Big Little Lies, though, that's a great show. I watched the whole thing. I thought it was a little rocky in the beginning, but I really loved how it ended up being a really great story about the importance of women working together. Women often are pitted against each other, both by outside parties and by themselves. So to see that at play in the miniseries, but then when the chips were down for people to come together, that was really, really rewarding. Let's just say that the show has a great payoff if you make it all the way through. And so in particular, Nicole Kidman won. I thought this was very interesting, over Reese Witherspoon, who of course produced Big Little Lies. Reese, they were both excellently cast. Nicole Kidman in her role and Reese Witherspoon in hers. And I don't think Reese Witherspoon would have been very effective in Nicole Kidman's role, but it really kind of it won, I think, Best Limited Series, so she still got an an Emmy. But still, for Reese, she has an Oscar too, by the way, right? So she's not wanting for trophies, although Nicole Kidman has an Oscar in addition. But, the juicier role ended up going to Nicole Kidman. The Nicole Kidman, Alexander Skarsgard subplot in Big Little Lies, and he won as well last night, really was the juiciest and I think the most interesting and unique aspect of the story. So I'm not surprised that they won. I'm very happy that they won, but it's just very interesting when you put these shows together. I'm sure to some degree Reese Witherspoon probably knew they would win too. It's got to hurt a little bit. It's like when Christian Bale won for The Fighter, his Oscar, and Mark Wahlberg's like, I produced this whole movie. This was all to be an Oscar vehicle for me. Margot Robbie was very careful for that not to be the case with I, Tonya. Although I do have to say, fascinatingly, everyone's talking mostly about Allison Janney winning an Oscar if anyone's going to win from that film. So it happened anyway. But at least Margot Robbie looks like she might get nominated, but we'll see, because I don't think Neon is the kind of distributor that can necessarily make that happen, especially with the sexual assault fiasco that came back and blew up in their face again like in the last week or so. But as for the Emmys, again, big night for women, and such a big night for women. I don't know. I'd like to see these things spread out a little bit, because I feel like when you just go a little too much in one direction, there's always a backlash. And so I'm like, let's share the Emmys with everyone. I don't know. And also I just feel, again, The Handmaid's Tale is just feminism gone crazy. It's a side of feminism that I'm not a huge fan of. I guess because I feel it's a little anti-male, and I have a big problem with that aspect of feminism to some, and I think it hurts the overall movement. But anyway, I'm curious, what did you think of the Emmys, and what did you think of the results? Now, speaking of women, Jamie Lee Curtis made major headlines on Friday when she announced, along with Jason Blum, that they're bringing back Halloween again for next year, 2018. And when you think about this, like at first everybody was just like, oh, that'll be exciting. Wow, yay, Jamie Lee Curtis, you get to work again. She's working though, we'll talk about that. But what I thought was really interesting is when you take a step back and you kind of think about it in the larger context of Hollywood, I think this is a reaction from Jason Blum and Universal to the sudden strength of Warner Brothers horror brand. I think they're like, whoa, we were dominating this market, but now, at this point, Warner Brothers, I think, is giving us a serious literal run for our money. Because Warner Brothers has the Conjuring franchise that's doing incredibly well, and now they have It, and potentially more Stephen King stories if they decide to do, to go in that direction. I think Warner Brothers definitely has a strong horror reputation now, and even if it's not Stephen King related, they're going to really push to even go further into that vertical. So I think this is Jason Blum and Universal's push back. Now, it's also interesting because the Conjuring cinematic universe, of course, is the brainchild of James Wan. And James Wan was discovered by Jason Blum with the first Saw movie. But James Wan has pretty much moved over to Warner Brothers at this point, not only with his Conjuring movies, but also, of course, the upcoming Aquaman. And he's also bringing his directors onto other DC things, like we've discussed, with David Sandberg from the Annabelle, Lights Out and Annabelle movie, going on to Shazam. Although I also think it's even more interesting that Jason Blum was the one who made the call to Universal to say, yes, I think James Wan can handle Furious 7, and it was that call that helped James Wan get the gig that launched Wan into the blockbuster business and allowed him to go beyond horror. So it's really interesting how close everybody is in Hollywood, and it is really a business of relationships, but also sometimes when people switch sides, how that makes things a little bit tricky. So anyway, since nostalgia is a big factor in its success, I'm not at all surprised that Jason Blum was like, well, let me go for some nostalgia and let me bring back Halloween. So Jamie Lee Curtis will return for one more time, and then John Carpenter will executive produce and be a creative consultant. But you know what? This isn't the first time that Halloween has returned. There was Halloween H2O in 1998 and Halloween Resurrection in 2002. And then also Jamie Lee Curtis has been really playing up this, image that she has as a Scream Queen on the show Scream Queens on Fox. So it doesn't seem that fresh to me when you think of all that. And I think that what also made it fresh, beyond the nostalgia factor, was that Stranger Things was such a phenomenon, and this kind of plays into that, although Stranger Things, of course, was largely based on it. And then also, I think the two-movie approach to it, and dividing it into the kids' movies, kids getting their own movie, and then the adults getting their own movie. Although some of you have told me about this rumor that they're going to bring the kids back for flashbacks in the second movie, so I think that's very exciting. But anyway, that, I think, made it seem fresh. I don't think it was just nostalgia. So I think the director choice for this new Halloween is going to be crucial to its success, and I think they should avoid a high-gloss look. I think that's just going to be a little too obvious. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if there's room for two in the horror space, because both Universal, with Jason Blum, and the Conjuring films and Warner Brothers are so prolific. It's not like they're just both making quality and popular horror movies. They're making a lot of them. And so I think you could be fast approaching a situation where there's many horror movies coming out, perhaps even more than there are comic book movies. And so that obviously is going to burn out the audience. Or will it? Comic book movies are still going quite strong. All right, so that's the stories for the day. Now, the viewer question, this is a great viewer question from Ivan Ooze. Great name. So Ivan Ooze is following up to a question that was asked last week about, I've been talking about how the mid-range movie is dead, and then someone actually asked a question about how It was a $35 million movie, and so that was kind of close to that mid-range movie range. And so what is that? Is the mid-range movie still dead? So Ivan Ooze is building on that. Great. So Ivan says, hello, Grace. Follow-up question to your mid-range movie answer. What is the biggest difference cost-wise between an under $10 million movie, a $30 to $60 million mid-range movie, and an over $60 million blockbuster? Those numbers are a little off. I'll massage it. I'll tweak it. But Ivan continues saying, I know CGI can get expensive, and so do big-name talents, but I'm curious to find out more. For example, is professional-grade equipment becoming less expensive and more accessible, so low-budget movies like Get Out can still look good while keeping the cost low? Great observation. Thanks for picking my question. I look forward to learning more from your great videos. Thank you, Ivan. So, of course, that is a factor. There's digital cameras. You can also shoot digital to look like film, with a really good cinematographer. So, yes, the movie can still look good and be made for very little money. But and also, when I first began this discussion, I talked about the fact that a studio executive or anyone working in the business can kind of guess how much a movie is going to cost just by reading the script. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So let me break it down for you. So the first category is the under $10 million picture. Now, this is a big break movie, and that means you believe in yourself in your movie. You're like, you know what? You don't have to give me a lot of money. I just want you to give me this opportunity because I know it's going to work out. That's how the people making the movie feel. And this is primarily reserved for new talent that needs to prove itself, or talent that needs to prove itself again, or is switching mediums. For instance, M. Night Shyamalan has had to go to the under $10 million picture because he had a really bad, he had a bad run there. And then also Jordan Peele was like, oh, hey, I'm going to go from comedy to horror. It's not particularly funny. I mean, Get Out had some funny moments, but it's not a comedy. So he needs to have a really low ball budget. Now, what this means is if it's a movie under $10 million, nobody's getting paid, at least up front. You can't have a back-end deal in place where you make a lot of money once it does well. Like, for instance, the movie, as I said, is something about you believing in yourself, just knowing that this is going to work out, so you're more than happy to take back-end because you feel it's going to be substantial. Also, if you're a big name like M. Night and you're willing to take very little money up front, you can usually get a pretty sweet back-end deal. But because the movie is so inexpensive, there's usually strong creative control in a movie like this because it's low risk for the studio. If it doesn't work out, they haven't lost very much. And again, as Ivan pointed out, this doesn't mean that the movie looks bad. Both Get Out and Split were made for under $10 million. So that's what a $10 million picture is. Then there's a movie this is a new category that's emerging thanks to films like It, and this is the around $30 million picture. This is where money is being spent on something. It can either be talent, usually one or two people, mostly in front of the camera. You just want to name talent to anchor the movie. And then also you have VFX. You have a substantial VFX situation going on. Like, for instance, Mother should have also been in this category, although it was revealed that not only did Jennifer Lawrence get $15 million for that movie, but then you have Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer getting 3 to 5 apiece, and then you have to put VFX on top of that, so that movie was actually more expensive than it should have been. People there should have been taking back end because, you know, Mother needs VFX. So anyway, it's like Sophie's choice. Do you want to spend your money on talent or do you want to spend it on VFX? But we don't have a ton of money to go around. It's like what they did with It. They spent it on VFX and I think a little bit of a fancier production. But, you know, again, they saved a lot of money on the cast. Then there's the mid-range movie, and this is now, I'd say, $40 to $70 million. This is money being spent across the board on both talent and production, and TV has knocked this out because there's not enough incentive in this type of movie because, this is usually like a good drama or a thriller, but you can get that on TV now, and you can get something that's a much more rewarding experience because instead of a 2-hour story, you can get like an 8 to 13-hour story. So that's why that's been knocked out. And they don't have enough money in the $40 to $70 million range to entice people to go to pay for a movie ticket. They're like, again, I can get that same kind of entertainment on the small screen, you know, with the fee I'm already paying for HBO or Netflix, etc. And then there's the $80 million plus movie, which is a blockbuster. And this is the spectacle. You spend a lot of money on a big all-star cast. You spend it on visual effects. You spend it on locations. You just go all out. You go shock and awe. So you really get audiences to say, this is worth the price and hassle of going to the movies. So those are your different categories. Under 10, around 30, 40 to 70, which is the one that's really in trouble, and then 80 plus. And that's how they're distinguishable. So I hope that answers your question, Ivan. And I also hope that's something interesting to keep in mind for those of you who are interested in filmmaking and also screenwriting, so you get an idea of the kind of movie you're making. All right, that's Morning Movie News. Please write down below, I think, today's top stories, today's viewer question from Ivan, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.